this video, we're going to discuss the order of operations. When you think about the order of operations, the first thing that usually comes to mind is the acronym PEMDAS. It's a quick way to remember which terms we're supposed to do in order, although there are some drawbacks to PEMDAS, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. Before we do that, we should fill in what all these letters mean. So the P stands for parentheses or brackets. And the E stands for exponents. Exponents are a power that we put above a number that tells us how many times we should multiply the base by itself. For example, 2 to the third power is written like this, which really means 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. 2 to the third is 8. It's also important, while we're talking about exponents in the order of operations, to talk about the difference between negative 3 raised to the second power like this, and negative 3 raised to the second power like this. So these are two different calculations. This first one here is telling us to take negative 3 and multiply it by itself. We know from last lecture a negative times a negative is a positive, so we get positive 9. This one, however, is actually a negative 1 being multiplied out in the front and exponentiation happening here. So we actually want to take care of the square first and then apply the negative in the second example. So I'm going to write it as negative 3 times 3 like this, which is actually negative 9. So just be careful with that. Your calculator also will do the very same thing when you use it. For example, if I do negative 3, to raise something to the second power, you can use this x squared button right here, or for all exponents, you can use the caret symbol. And so then you can just raise it to whatever power you like. So there it is, negative 3 squared. We see we get negative 9, again, from what the one that we were just talking about. If I wanted to get rid of that negative, I would include it inside of this value and then raise it to the second power. Oops. And then we get positive. Then we get to the next and probably most important part of order of operations, the M and the D. M, of course, standing for multiplication, and D for division. However, it's commonly overlooked that these two values are on the same level. Because they're on the same level, we actually want to do these kind of at the same time. We attack them from left to right. So when we get done with exponents, we're really looking for all of the multiplication and division, and we're going from left to right. It doesn't necessarily mean do all of the multiplication first and then do all of the division. We just say, okay, we're at the step where we do all the multiplying and dividing. Let's start on the very far left and work our way to the right. And then lastly, we have addition and subtraction. We talked a great deal about addition and subtraction in the last video. They're essentially the same operation, just whether or not we're combining two negatives or two positives. And so those two are also on the same level. But the importance of attacking from left to right is not necessarily there like it is with multiplication and division. The reason why is combining integers with addition and subtraction is commutative. As long as we're keeping the sign, the integrity of the sign in addition and subtraction, it doesn't really matter what order we're doing them in. But and multiplication actually is the same as that as well. It's division that screws that whole thing up. But there's a big difference between 18 divided by 3 and 3 divided by 18. And so this is where we have to come up with this rule about going from left to right. Most importantly, again, in the step with multiplication and division. Let's look at some examples. I'm going to leave the examples from the student notes that are on Canvas, Just for your own practice, the completed versions will be up too, so you can check your answers. But I have some other ones here that I thought would be good to work on as well. This first one actually is like a really big viral type problem that you may see, I don't know, like on Facebook or some sort of social media where people are arguing to the death about what the answer is. Is it two? Is it five? I don't know. We're going to talk about it now. According to our rules, you would think, oh, okay, I'm supposed to take care of this multiplication first. But remember, we just talked about that idea about being on the same level. And so this is one of those cases where this rule comes into play. Technically, we should be taking care of 4 divided by 2 first. When we get to this multiplication and division step, which is the first step we would attack in here, there's no parentheses, there's no exponents. We would want to take care of 4 divided by 2 first. So when we do that, we actually get now 2 times 2 plus 1. Another thing about the order of operations, it's really good to write out every single line. All you should be doing is attacking one step at a time and then rewriting the rest of the problem in the next line. Don't get in the habit of trying to do like 6, 7 steps in one, because you'll go from the problem to some answer, and there's not really any communication into how you got there. So if you got the wrong answer, there's no chance for partial credit, or there's no way for me to look and see where you went wrong. Also, don't rely on the calculator to do everything for you. It's really easy to mistakenly put an input in that's wrong, and it messes up the entire problem. Now, if you need it for intermediate steps, I don't know, maybe you forgot what 4 divided by 2 was, that's fine. But then write out the rest of the problem on your own. Don't just try to throw it all into the calculator and hope that it works. The calculator does know order of operations, but it can get much more complicated when we start throwing in parentheses and brackets inside of parentheses or things like that. So write them all out. Use your calculator when you need. Otherwise, be very articulate in the way that you express your work. So from here, we would take care of the multiplication. The 2 times 2, of course, we know it's 4. And then lastly, 4 plus 1 is 5. So you can go post this and see how many of your colleagues or friends on social media tell you that it's 5 and how many of them tell you that it's 2. And you can have some great spirited debate because you love math like I do. Okay, so we'll do a couple more. At the very top up here, I'm just going to put PEMDAS as a reminder. We'll try another one. How about 11 minus 4 times 8 minus 3 plus 1 squared. I'll give you a second to copy that down. At any time in these videos as we're doing examples, if this is stuff that you feel like, oh, I got this, I totally understand it, this is a great opportunity for you to pause the video, do the problem in its entirety, and then just fast forward, make sure that you got the right answer. So that's another good thing about these videos, is that you have the control to be like, okay, I get this, I don't need another version. Or if we go through an example and you're not 100% sure, you can go back and watch it again, or you can email me and say, hey, can you give me a couple more examples of that, because I watched the video a few times, I'm still just not really getting it. So in this one, the most important thing, we got parentheses in here, we got brackets in here, we got some exponent, we got a little bit of everything going on. And so keep in mind that because we're dealing with parentheses first, we want to start on the inside and work our way out. So that's the most important thing here. In this case, the very most inner piece would be this 3 plus 1. And like I was mentioning in the last example, I'm going to write everything out other than the piece that I'm working with. So this 11 out here, minus 4, times, don't forget there's no symbol between two things, and it's a multiplication. So if you want to put a little times value right there, that would be very helpful in the near future. And then inside we have 8 minus 4 squared. At this point here, we're still working inside of these brackets, and we have a 4 squared. So we're going to take care of that. 4 squared is 16. The rest of this is going to stay the same. And then we continue to work. 8 minus 16, we subtract these values because the 8 is positive and our 16 we're calling negative. We combine those, we get negative 8. Still on the outside, we have 11 minus 4 times. So at this step here, we have two operations left. We have a multiplication of -4 and -8. And then we also have a addition subtraction type thing going on here, and a subtraction 11 minus 4. And so the order that we want to do these is our -4 minus 8 first, or I'm sorry, -4 times -8 first. -4 times a -8 gives us a positive 32. And the 11 we haven't touched yet just comes right down. Our final step here, we just add 11 and 32 together, and we get 43 as our final answer. Do two more. About 4,000 times 1 plus 0.5 to the third power. So again, we want to start on the inside and work our way out. This is a really good problem because it's going to lead us to financial problems that you're going to do early in 120, like compound interest. This looks like a problem from compound interest. Your calculator actually would do this entire thing in one step, but I'm going to break it down and show you in a couple steps, and then I'll verify with the calculator. So the first thing we do is we combine 1 and 0.5, and so everything else stays the same. We have 4,000 times 1.5 raised to the third power. Again, we have multiplication on the outside here with 4,000 and the 1.5 to the third. Exponent should be the thing that we take care of next. So we're going to do 1.5 raised to the third power. I'll bring my good trusty calculator in for that. 1.5 caret 3. And we get 3.375. So I have 4,000 times 3.375. And I want to multiply these together. If you want to take an answer that already exists in your calculator and you want to like store it or use it in the next calculation, like for example, I want to do 4,000 times this answer, I'm just going to do immediately times 4,000. The ANS is taking this number right here, which was the previous answer, and it's calling it the ANS, or the answer. So I'm going to do that times 4,000. I'm going to get 13,500. And the last example of order of operations that we're going to do involves a fraction that has a bunch of stuff going on. Now, we haven't officially gotten into too much detail with fractions. We're going to in our next, on our Friday videos, or a couple videos away from now. We'll really get into more detail with fractions, but I wanted to look at one of these examples. You may see it in your homework or maybe in a quiz at some point, so it's good to know. And I'll write it out. 7 plus 6 times 2 plus 2 all over 4 squared minus 3 squared minus 2 squared. So the first thing I wanted to mention about this problem is that even though it doesn't have any parentheses in the problem specifically, we assume that when we're dealing with a big fraction like this, that the numerator is in some sort of parentheses or brackets and the denominator is in some sort of parentheses or brackets. So in other words, we want to take care of everything on top first. We're going to take care of everything on the bottom first. And then the last thing that we're going to do is divide the top divided by the bottom. So let's start on the top here. On the top, we have multiplication and we have some addition. So we'll take care of the multiplication first. That's going to give us 12 in the middle. And we still have that 7 in the front and 2 in the back. On the bottom, we actually have a bunch of exponents that we can take care of. 4 squared is 16. Notice that the negative is not inside of parentheses, so we're going to leave the minus out there. 3 squared is 9, minus, and then 2 squared is 4. Now we have a bunch of addition and subtraction, so we're going to try to simplify this thing. 7 plus 12 is 19, plus 2 is 21 on the top. On the bottom, we have 16 minus 9, which is 7, 7 minus 4, which is 3, and lastly, we have 21 divided by 3. 21 divided by 3 is 7. So that's it for the order of operations. Again, you'll have some more examples of problems that you can work on with the solutions in the class notes and, of course, on the homework. And, of course, reach out to me if you have any questions yourself.